Hello, Algebra 1. This is your lesson for the day. We are solving quadratic equations using square roots. And maybe I'll back up just a little bit. Just as a reminder, a quadratic equation is just any equation to the second degree. So there is a variable squared. The highest degree exponent is to the second power. So that's what a quadratic equation is. Today we're solving quadratic equations using square roots, and we just have three different examples here. The first one is 3x squared minus 27 equals 0. Now notice the variable's only in one spot here. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically just solve a two-step equation to get the x squared by itself, to isolate that x squared. So we're going to add 27 to each side. And of course, then these cancel out, and we just get 3x squared equals 27. And then we'll undo multiplication with division. We'll just divide both sides by 3. And we get the x squared by itself. X squared is equal to 9. Now, when I really think about this, this is the most important part of the lesson today, is this is some number squared, some number times itself to equal 9. There are two answers. 3 times itself is 9, but also negative 3 times itself, and negative 3 times a negative 3 is also a positive 9. So the new step we're going to use here is we're just going to take the square root of both sides of this equation. And the square root undoes squaring something. They're opposite, they're inverse operations. So we just get x by itself, and know that x could be two different things here. The square root of 9 is not only 3, x could be 3, or x could be negative 3. So we have to write both of those answers. Another way to do that, maybe a simpler way to write that, would be x could equal plus or minus 3. So this plus or minus 3 means the same thing as x equals 3 or x equals negative 3. So I'd like you to write your answers like that, okay? Number 2. Just slightly different here. We have x squared minus 10 equals negative 10. And again, we're just going to get the x squared by itself. We'll add 10 to both sides. And we get x squared is equal to 0. Now, when we take the square root of both sides of this equation, there's no such thing as a negative 0. So here we only have one answer. X could only be 0. There's one solution. So sometimes when x squared is equal to a positive number, you're going to have two solutions. X could be plus or minus 3. If you get the x squared equals 0, you're only going to have one solution. And finally, your final problem here. Again, we have a sort of two-step equation to solve before taking the square root of both sides. We'll subtract 11 from both sides. And 16 minus 11 is 5. So we get negative 5x squared is equal to 5. But then we've got to divide by negative 5 to get the x squared by itself. And x squared is equal to 5 divided by negative 5 is negative 1. Now, when I take the square root of both sides of this equation, I get x equals the square root of negative 1. But there's no number that we could ever multiply by itself to get a negative number. So there is no real solution. And this is exactly how I want you to write this today. There's no real solution. When you take Algebra 2, you're going to spend a lot more time on this and talk about a different type of imaginary solution. But for now, if you have x equals the square root of a negative number, that's not a real number. That's not possible. So no real solution. All right, have a great day, Algebra 1. Enjoy.